Bula, hello. My name is Libe Movono. I'm a freelance journalist operating out of Suva, Fiji, but covering the Pacific region. I work for several Australian, New Zealand, and as well as outlets outside of the Indo-Pacific region, doing multi-platform genres of stories. I'm here at the TechCamp Sydney as a trainer, the only trainer coming out of the Pacific, and it's been a very exciting as well as informative experience listening to the 30 participants, a lot of whom are from the Pacific Islands, talking about the problem of disinformation and misinformation that they're facing. The disinformation problem in Fiji, in particular where I'm from, is definitely emerging and quite prominent now. We tend to see disinformation campaigns or disinformation initiatives come up around the elections period. And 4 years ago, we started to see that happen, quite well structured and quite consistent and seemingly well resourced as well. Now that we are again just over a month away from a general elections, we're beginning to see it all happen again. And so it takes the form of pages that replicate large, well known independent media, as well as impersonations of opposition figures or people who have dissenting voices that may not be parallel to that of the ruling government. And a lot of times, when journalists in Fiji and in other countries in the Pacific attempt to clarify or to negate the disinformation attempts that take place, we can clearly see that the public face a lot of confusion and difficulties deciding which is truth and which is fake. So it's most definitely an issue that needs to be addressed structurally. It's a comprehensive effort, I think, needs to be made because a lot of these disinformation initiatives, although they're directed at the online communities of the Pacific, a lot of them is being resourced from outside of the Pacific and could possibly be based outside of the Pacific.
Misinformation is and disinformation is a real challenge back at home. Um, with the rise in social media and technology, it's people that want to be journalists are spreading a lot of um, non-factual information online, and people tend to believe that. So it's a challenge that all the media outlets in Samoa are trying to address. Um, in 2019, before the pandemic, we had the measles epidemic influenza, which killed over 80 babies back in Samoa. There was a lot of misinformation online, um, anti-vax saying all this stuff about, you know, which was a challenge for us. And some people were coming up to us wanting to publish their opinions and their views, discouraging parents to have their children vaccinated, which was a very big problem for us. What we are doing, or what we did, is stick to our ethics. We did a lot of fact checkings and did our own research before publishing any story, and we were careful. In Samoa, we also have traditional healers. They were coming forth and encouraging mothers to take their babies to traditional healers instead of taking them to the hospital first. So for us, we had to make a decision whether we wanted to publish their story, which will then confuse the population. Should we take our children to the hospital? Should we take them to the traditional healers? Our editors did not publish any of those stories, so they had to go to other medias, and people criticized them for that because it caused a lot of confusion. But I think for us, I speak for Samuel Observer, they get to their ethics and the leadership there. And I think that's the way to counter misinformation and disinformation.
Gone are the days where we fight or we challenge to be the first to break such news. Now, with media organization in Tonga, such as Broadcom, we do not emphasize or we do not dwell in breaking the news first. We dwell in making sure that the source and the information are correct. Because if we were to fight or to be first out there breaking the news, we're always late with it because the general public always seems to break such news, even if it's false or true information. And that's the kind of impact that we have. Sometimes it does matter who breaks the news or who misinform this, but what we try as a media industry or a media organization such as Broadcom, we try to uh, be accountable to what we give out and be accurate in what we post on our social media. Hence, that's how we can attract people to stay with us and and have us as a qualified and the truthful information out there on media. Anyone can just post anything on anyone, regardless if it's disinformation or regardless if it's defaming such other people or even politician. But it does play an impact with people's lives, especially those that believes anything that's on media.
I think that disinformation is quite dangerous. Although at the moment we're seeing it emerging, and we're seeing it only in the area of national leadership, particularly in and around the democratic process of elections, it's quite dangerous because it's setting a situation or setting a precedent where people really aren't sure because of the disinformation techniques being used, which is basically the impersonation of independent, well-known media organizations as well as independent leaders. They've done it quite consistently and very well resourced. And so, for example, when they're impersonating branding, it's very similar and quite well designed to the branding of these organizations and individuals that they're impersonating. And so, it's very difficult for people who don't have a trained eye to be able to pick out the hallmarks of fake news or the hallmarks of a disinformation campaign. And even when we make attempts to educate the public, it's understandable that they will remain confused because it's hard to tell sometimes. Like right now, if you're not someone that is looking at these media organization social media platforms every day, when you do search for them, the fake pages tend to come out because these pages have received a lot of financial support and endorsement in the form of sponsored pages and things like that. So it's quite a difficult situation. And I think that it will have a demoralizing impact on those journalists who are working to negate fake news because while the media organization and while journalists tend to be not very well resourced or not very well paid, the campaigns that are being done, particularly in the context of elections, they seem to come from money because you can tell by the consistency and the volume of these fake pages or of the trolling, for example, that it's well orchestrated. So there's probably a professional setup somewhere where people are trained and people are given the content and people have backup teams to help them impersonate and to help them negate the dissenting voices. I think it has a long-term impact on democracy and people's access to it because if they don't know, what they're choosing, or if they don't necessarily know what the genuine messaging is or who the genuine organizations and individuals are, they're not necessarily able to choose correctly. And so I think it's a problem that is emerging in the region and one that needs to be addressed because right now the cost of data and the cost of devices, so therefore the cost of accessing the internet as well as social media in some parts of the Pacific is quite comparable to the developed or the Western world. So it's very, very easy to have access to disinformation.